had a good long weekend. I really do. It's chilly in the garage, Pete. What do you think?
A bit chilly.
Yeah, I never thought about air conditioning. Well, we've got an open fire, but we haven't struck that up yet. Well, plenty of time. Not necessarily plenty of wood, but plenty of time. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion from the garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeux. Peter Clayton's behind the camera. The program that 5 days a week on Facebook presents all sorts of interesting stuff that you maybe won't hear anywhere else. And then as a podcast, wherever you get your favourite podcasts from, I have no idea. My favourite way of doing it, as I've said to you, is just to go to that little Google Nest thing and say, get me Jeremy Cordeux's Court of Public Opinion for today. And there it'll be, if it all works according to Hoyle. Some birthdays and then some stuff. It's the 13th. Today, Slim Dusty. You know his real name? Do you know his real name, Pete?
No.
David Kirkpatrick.
That rings a bell, yeah.
David Kirkpatrick. Slim Dusty, 1927 he was born. Australian country music singer and songwriter. Born in Kempsey, New South Wales. He died in 2003. And we had some wonderful conversations, Slim Dusty and I. Just a beautiful man. And I think with, the Pub with No Beer and a few others, he probably would have been Australia's most successful singer, entertainer. A lot of it didn't happen in the cities, you understand, but out in rural Australia. 1920, on this day, no babies, please. No babies, please. The US Post Office says children cannot be sent by parcel post. I don't know what to do with that. Who would imagine you could pop a baby in a box and send it somewhere? How odd. Volkswagen fined €1 billion. German prosecutors got them over some sort of diesel emission. I guess you could call it a scandal. Dear, oh dear. Why gild the lily? The VWs are very good cars. They now make Bentley, of course. Very successful company. But I suppose they could afford to pay $1 billion fine. Tim Allen, my son Christopher's favourite actor and comedian, Home Improvements, Toy Story. He was Buzz Lightyear. To infinity and beyond. The Santa Claus movie franchise. What else? Galaxy Quest. All the Jungle movies. Born in Denver, Colorado in 1953. And still going strong. Very creative man. Teenager, don't know his name, but fired 6 blanks at Queen Elizabeth on this day in 1981. Why? Why? Benny Goodman, 1986, American clarinetist and band leader, the king of swing, dies at 77. Mrs. Alexander Hamilton serves ice cream for dessert to General George Washington in Washington on this day in 1789. Somebody had the good sense to make a note of that. Yeah, why not? Ice cream, first served. In what, I don't know whether it would have been the White House, would it? Because they burnt that down. The Brits did. Where am I? Basil Rathbone, the definitive Sherlock Holmes, British actor, was born in Johannesburg. He died in 1967, but born in 1892. Basil Rathbone. The longest recorded attack of hiccups. I know what you're saying. Where does he get this stuff from? I sometimes wonder myself. The longest recorded attack of hiccups. His name was Charlie Osborne. He got the hiccups and they continued for 68 years. dies 11 months after they stop, in the year 1922. MIT researchers propose creating, MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a very august outfit. 2022, they decide that it could be a good idea to create a raft of space bubbles floating above the Earth to reflect the sun's rays and to help fight climate change. That didn't get off the ground, actually. But speaking of things that didn't get off the ground, no, I won't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. I want to do some sort of heroic failures. And you might think about it between now and then. Things that people talked about and they were going to be the next big thing. Well, we've got a list of them. Or I will have by Wednesday. What else? Anthony Farrs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, patents the first US accordion in 1854. A jury in Santa Maria, California, acquits pop singer Michael Jackson for molesting a 13-year-old boy at his Neverland ranch. Why was it called Neverland?
It's a fairy tale, isn't it?
Peter Pan. Yeah, I suppose he was something of a Peter Pan, wasn't he? But did he really honestly expect people, a jury to, well, clearly they thought there was reasonable doubt to which he was entitled, but does a grown man get into bed with a 13-year-old boy and not have people ask questions and sometimes something more serious? Chris Evans, the American actor, Captain America, 1981. God, he's young, isn't he? 1981. Oh, and Steve Georgianus, Australian politician, South Australia, born in Adelaide in 1959. Happy birthday, Steve. Hope you're going to have a good day. A good day filled with really good things. I'll reach across. I never come totally prepared. It puts the excitement into everything. It's sort of like the forecast. They're forecasting a dry and warm winter. God, it hasn't been dry or warm so far. I don't know. I think that's a nice and mild winter's a good idea. Not good if you're in a ski chalet. The ski season opened on the weekend, and not with a great deal of snow, I gather. But a nice mild winter. You can't please everybody. Did you hear this little fun fact that we had here in Adelaide something like 64,000 lightning strikes the other day? There was one of those storm cells that swept across the city. Very, very dramatic. You know, and I put my head out across the veranda and I looked and I saw all these trees waving and the possums hanging on for dear life. Oh, God. Possums are really tough. And that need to be. Happy birthday to the Women's Weekly. I mustn't forget that. 90 years young. 90 years. You know, there was a time, the Women's Weekly personified Australia. I don't know today where it's at, but they still call it the Women's Weekly when it comes out monthly. That's a bit funny. But how an institution like that can lose its way. Something that was such an important part of everyday life can just slip away. And it can happen with newspapers, department stores, magazines, radio stations, politicians. My observation is that it usually happens when ownership or leadership or management changes. Sad. International Gin Day. Do you like gin, Pete?
No.
I don't think I've ever tasted gin. I think it's made from the juniper berry or something. I don't know. But gin is quite popular. But International Gin Day, also on the weekend. I didn't know there was such a thing as an International Gin Day. Coming out on, let me see, Thursday, the employment figures. At the moment, 3.7%. They bounce around, but they should be reasonably good. Still a 40 or 50-year low in terms of unemployment. But the lower that figure, I think we put on 20,000 jobs last month, about. But the lower that unemployment figure, the better the economy, which will put upward pressure on the interest rates. And this that the Reserve Bank is trying to do is a very, very delicate balance. Very delicate. And people are using the R word, the recession word all the time, threatening it. I think they're probably more threatening Philip Lowe, which is grossly unfair. I must find time later in this week to talk about that. This man is doing, in the circumstances, a great job, frankly. But government, of course, has to have someone to blame. Congratulations to all those people who received orders of Australia for the King's birthday yesterday. Notably, one of my favourite people, Barry Humphries. He got an AC. The author, Tim Winton, and I think it was 950 others in the general division for the first time. Women, more women were nominated than men. And a special mention, Adelaide's Leon Biner, legendary Leon Biner, can stick an OAM after his illustrious name. Now, if you feel that the system, and with every Australia Day or New Year's Day award, there are people who criticise and find fault, and I suppose that just comes with the job. But if you feel that the system has missed out somebody that, in your experience, should have a gong, nominate him or her. I will always be grateful to Jim Jarvis, who years and years ago nominated me, and I ended up with an AM. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. You should, if you think somebody deserves a gong, put him or her up. More revelations about consultants, advisors. Don't know exactly what handle, because when I was growing up, PricewaterhouseCoopers were an accounting firm, but it's a lot more highfalutin these days. Consultants, advisors, PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. You know how often that I've grumbled here in the Court of Public Opinion about the high cost of health care, a big component of which is high-tech medical components. You know, pacemakers, prosthetics, knees, hips, nuts, bolts, all kinds of things that we need and somehow are lucky enough for technology to be able to supply. But we find ourselves paying 4 or 5 times what the same thing is sold for overseas. An example is the basic pacemaker, selling in Europe for €1,000. Well, let's call it $1,000. Here, $7,000 or $8,000 for the same product. And this, of course, flows immediately through to make health insurance almost unaffordable. Probably the most expensive health insurance in the world. Now, here's the rub. PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, have been walking, it would seem, it is alleged, both sides of the street. Employed, apparently, by the government to advise on what looks like a rip-off, while at the same time employed by the medical appliance industry to better prepare their argument. Now, I wonder if both sides were given the same advice. Now, I'll say it for the 15,000th time, government should not rely on expensive consultants. You've got a public service, for God's sake, a very big one and a very expensive one. Now, you got yourselves into this mess. Don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Extraordinary things happening at the moment. The government thinking that we will tax younger Australians to pay for the well-being and care of older Australians. They've just started to realise that the baby boomers are getting older. Yeah, and we're not going away. No, we are getting older. There's a hell of a lot of us. And there just isn't enough money to pay for what's going to be needed, which is aged care. Now, governments don't have a lot of foresight. Keep that in mind. Their thinking is from election to election and from budget to budget. And by the time it's a problem, of course, it's going to be somebody else's problem. I think, honestly, that's how they believe it'll work out. Some talk about a special tax. Oh, no. Well, we can't call it a tax. No. We'll call it a levy. A levy. Much better. This is when we have a situation with billions of dollars being wasted on the NDIS, hundreds of millions of dollars being given to Pacific Islands to combat climate change. What are they supposed to do? Wave the dollar bills in front of the sun? We have people sleeping on the streets. Not as bad here as it is in Sydney. And it's not as bad in Sydney as it is in LA. But that's none of our business, that sort of thing. Multi-billion-dollar businesses like the AFL and the NRL not paying 1 single cent in tax. So we're just going to slug Joe and Jill Citizen again. Yes. Well, they've copped it always. Why not again and again and again? There's not one country in the entire OECD that relies on personal tax the way we do. And if you add up all the taxes and all the levies and all the temporary levies, there's really no incentive to go to work, which immediately destroys your economy. We do not need to be throwing money around the South Pacific, where people, bless them, but they spend their days mostly drinking kava under a shady palm tree, living a life in paradise. I'm sorry, that's what I believe. I've been there. I've had a look. It's a great lifestyle. Give me a break. And by the way, if the South Pacific Islanders are worried about the oceans rising, the water levels, which seems to be their main concern, if the sea level is rising, allegedly because of melting ice caps, the sea would be going up everywhere. It isn't. It's that simple. It is so silly. $1 million homes right on the beach at Watson's Bay and Camp Cove and Lady Martin's Beach, Double Bay in Sydney, Portsea and Sorrento in Victoria, West Beach, West Lakes in Adelaide. I'm sure there are others down south and way over north. Sure, there are occasional king tides. But listen, here's a very good thing to look at, because we often see pictures. The Sydney Opera House, right on the water. The high water mark comes right up to the forecourt. The high water mark has not changed an inch over the many, many years. I wonder how these idiots can explain that. If the water did rise around Bennelong Point, patrons in the front stalls would be getting their feet wet. And it hasn't happened. And there's no talk even of it happening. Have a look at a picture of the Sydney Opera House and you'll see what I mean. If there was any chance that that high water mark would be moving up, it would be doing it everywhere, and it would be $1 billion talking point. It could be a shock horror story. It really would be. As it would be with beachfront real estate everywhere, which is worth, and still is, competitively worth billions and billions of dollars, and no talk about that disappearing or getting cheaper anytime sooner. I know that they've had some wildfires in Canada. I'll make this my last comment. 400, I think, wildfires in Canada joined up to create an enormous air pollution problem affecting Canada and most of the United States of America. It's a sad and seasonal regular occurrence. But why this season is so bad, I don't know. But you get good ones and you get bad ones. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion, ladies and gentlemen. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow. I'm Jeremy Cordeux. Peter and I will be back. Believe in yourself, and goodbye for now.